What's going on, guys? It's Mike for Sim Racing 604 and welcome to my review of VBOX Sim. This is a lap analysis software designed specifically for racing simulators by RaceLogic. Most of us would have seen RaceLogic controllers all over sim racing, including on every dash in Assetto Corsa Competizione. And what does VBOX Sim do? Well, as mentioned, this is a tool to break down various aspects of your laps in Assetto Corsa Competizione, rFactor 1, rFactor 2, iRacing, Project Cars 1 and 2, and the four most recent F1 titles. The actual VBOX Sim program is a tiny tool that just runs in the background while you sim race. It collects both data and video from your session, which can be analyzed in the Circuit Tools software, which is where you'll spend the majority of your time. With VBOX running concurrent to any of the sims I mentioned, a small VBO file is created with a simple day and time naming convention, along with a very large video file of the same name, but more on that later. So what would anyone want with all of this data? Well, basically it answers the how and the why of gaining and losing lap time. A lap delta indicator in game can tell you where on the track you're going faster or slower than your reference lap, but what actually caused that change? Did you brake later? Did you get on the power faster? Run a better line to carry more speed? VBOX Sim and Circuit Tools can answer that question for you. It's currently listed on Steam for $129 US. This is a one-time fee that gives you access to not only the VBOX Sim tool to capture the data in the video, but also the Circuit Tools software. Some of you may remember the Motec video I did on this channel some time ago, which is a free option, but there is one thing that sets RaceLogic's offering apart: video. The sync video review of your laps is a massive aid in analyzing the data. So what I'm going to do here is run you through a comparison of two laps in ACC to see where I gained or lost time and what caused it, and then we'll use this tool to compare ACC and rFactor 2 in an identical lap scenario to see how the two sims stack up. And it should be no surprise to anyone that's ever watched me drive in a racing sim that I'm no professional and definitely no racing engineer. So a lot of this is way over my head, but you'll see that even with a rudimentary understanding of cars, you can get a lot of useful information from VBOX. So let's get into it. Alright guys, so we've run a few laps now and I'm going to open up Circuit Tools. And when you first launch it, you're presented with 5 options. Open a file. If you're running actual RaceLogic hardware, you can pull an SD card and pull information from there. So a quick start video, software guide, and you can also open recent files. In this case, I want to browse. I am going to choose a session from yesterday. Open it up and you're presented with this. So we have, as you can see, Assetto Corsa Competizione. We have our track map here plotted with all these nice sector points and the start finish line, which can be manually set, by the way, with Control G. And what we're going to do is just take a look. So right now there's a timing delta enabled. Nobody cares about a timing delta because of course we're not comparing anything. So what we have is this speed trace, and you can see the peaks are more speed, the valleys are less speed. And in this case, the peak speed comes right there. So just at the end of a straightaway, and then the valley, the deepest valley, I guess, is somewhere about here, which is close to the apex. As you can see, just at the end of Sector 2. That is fairly easy to understand, and then we can add various points of data in here, or various traces, I should say. In this case, I will go ahead and add a throttle. So as you can see, more throttle with this red line here, and less throttle as it approaches 0. So this obviously straightaway, all these long flat out parts, straightaways, that's fairly easy to understand. And then these little spikes is me feathering the gas around certain corners and just pressing play to run the video. So fairly easy to understand, hopefully. And again, we can add brake to that. You can add anything you want. And by the way, it's showing the date this was captured, and at any point when you stop it, you can see what your speed was, how much with the percentage of throttle, percentage of brake, etc., etc. So if you want to know in a certain corner where you were, like let's say at this point, I was at 0% brake and about 80% throttle, making my way around this corner. So again, fairly easy to understand. let's go ahead and add a second lap. So all we do in the top left-hand corner here, you have a list of all the laps I ran. In this case, the 203.34 was the fastest, and I'm going to add the lap before that, lap 2, because there is a delta of about half a second. So just click the checkbox by there, and the slower lap is the blue, as you can see here, and then it pops up in the second screen. So we have the speed trace here, and you can see it more or less parallels in some cases. Like right here, we had a low of, what am I seeing here? And by the way, you can just put on a speedometer of your own. And if you're wondering why it's not perfectly synced, the video capture is delayed just slightly. And so it's picking up data, and the video capture in this case is somewhere around 0.05 seconds behind, but you can create an offset to sync those up. So, regardless, it's very, very close in this case, and you can work to set it perfectly in sync. Now, in this case, we have a low right here of 170 kilometers, or excuse me, 164 kilometers an hour on the blue lap. If we move it slightly back, the lowest the red got was about 168. So in this particular corner, we carried more speed, and you can see right here, there's quite a great deal of variance. So on the blue lap was actually carrying more speed at this point, and then it dropped. So the lowest it got on the red lap was about 80 kilometers an hour, and the lowest in the blue all the way down to 75. And again, you can see that here. You can see same position on the track. Red lap, I was at 82 kilometers an hour. Blue lap, 73. So a massive difference. So all of those things add up to the half-second difference. So what could be accounting for that? We'll look at one more thing first. We will look at the relative timing, and I'm going to disable speed. So what you have here, this red line here is the reference lap. That is the red lap, and the blue line, as you might imagine, it represents the blue lap, and this is relative timing. So you can see it finishes somewhere around here, which the relative timing was about a half second off. But there's mountains like this and valleys like this. The mountains represent the blue lap getting further and further behind, and the valleys represent it getting closer. So in this case, these cars were, how far apart were they? They were about 1/10 of a second apart, so fairly close. But this is interesting right here because we have quite a peak there. So on the blue lap, I lost a bunch of time, and then I gained that time back almost perfectly. So let's look at, I'm going to press play, and let's look at what happened. So in the first part of this corner on the blue lap, I was slower, but then you see I got a nicer exit here, right there. And so that delta got back to what it should be. Now you see it falls and falls and falls. So obviously we carried a lot of speed out of this corner. I'm going to go ahead and press spacebar to play it again. And because we've got a better launch, I'm carrying more speed, and that lap delta is getting less going around this corner. I slowed down a little bit, but then carried good speed. And then we'll stop it here. Okay, so right now, you can see there's a little dip. So if I run that, so the blue lap was catching up. Okay, you can see there's a little bit of a visual difference. I'm a little bit further ahead on the red lap than the blue lap. And then I got slowed down a bit, but you can see how close they are at this point, but it's going to get even closer. So a nicer exit on the blue lap. Early on the brakes on the red lap, which cost me a bit of time, excuse me, on the blue lap, which costed a bit of time. But then it pulls darn close. So you can see the relative difference here, and let's see where it's at its highest. So you can see that on the blue lap, I was well behind. In this case, in the red lap, let's back it up just slightly. You can see that Audi Sport sign. It'll come into focus, and we just, actually there's multiple, so that's a bad reference. But let's look at the Fanatic sign on the side. You can see it's already visible on the red lap, but it takes a while for it to come around. And that's a bad reference too. This video's falling apart. All right, you see the Fanatic sign come into play about a half second ahead of where it does on the blue lap. Now, What's interesting is you can also, right now it is synced for time, you can also sync for position. So if I go up here just under the track sign, change to position, it will keep these two in sync. And why would you want to do that, you might ask? Let's turn off the delta, let's turn on speed, and let's look at a point where they were not the same. So in this case, right about here, so a lot less speed, and you can see we are position synced. So that is virtually the same image. You see the time is off, but it's the same point on track, and you can see now that we're position synced, 73 kilometers an hour according to the data in Circuit Tools, 80 kilometers an hour on the reference lap. So much faster around that corner, carried more speed through the apex. Okay, so just for reference, let's go to these peaks right here. 250 versus 249, that's pretty close. We could be dealing with fractions of kilometers an hour at that point. You can see right here, if I press play, it should sync up visually. We're carrying almost the exact amount of speed. Again, slight delta there. Oh no, 240 versus 240, that's good. And even ACC agrees, so you can see perfectly in sync there. And let's go one more point here. So again, the red lap carrying 142 kilometers an hour around this corner, 135 on the blue lap. So very interesting. And of course, we can pull up our throttle and brake percentage and see exactly what happened. In fact, let's go to the timing delta again instead of speed. And you can see, where did it diverge? Let's look at one of these points. So gained quite sharply here, so this is obviously more exit speed. So you can see 99 kilometers an hour on the reference lap, 101, so slightly more exit speed. But even single digit kilometers an hour can add up quickly. You see it already went to 98 versus 105, so hence the difference. And I'm willing to bet if we look here, and I know I said I was going to talk about throttle. I'll get to it in a second. Let's see what happens here. So 82 versus 87, and that is going to really add up. So you see the blue, the red lap never catches up to the blue lap. And why is that? It is this, and it's a bit hard to see. Let's zoom in a bit. So this matters a lot. So in this case, the blue here got on the accelerator earlier. Granted, I got more acceleration eventually out of the red. This peak is higher. Let's look at that. Throttle percentage is 61 versus 52. But you can see here, when this starts going up, and we'll follow this on the left here, looking under throttle percentage. So 1% on the blue lap, 15, all the way up to 50% and climbing. Let's see, where was it? So I was at 40% throttle roughly, while still at 0 on the red lap. Hence the reason you see this delta time falling. And you could do the same thing. Let's go ahead and zoom out. Is that reset? Yeah, reset. Let's go ahead and look at our brake trace. And let's see if we can find anything else interesting. So what is this? Those brakes are virtually the same. Where can I find? Is this Magus Beckett's? Yes. Okay. So you can see, and it could come down to corner line, which is why you like to have the video reference. But also, it's interesting to see the difference here. So you see the delta diverging, meaning we're losing time here on the blue lap versus the red lap. But you see how much more brake I'm using. Peak. Let's zoom in here. Where did it go? Oops. Sorry, reset. Let's look at, is that it? Okay, there we go. All right, so let's look at this section here. And you can see that somewhere around the peak I used 90% of my brake on the blue lap, and the peak on the red was only about 75%. Second spike, you can see that's 100% braking, really slowing things down, whereas I just kind of not feathered, but just kind of used lighter braking, about 72%. Timing was pretty good, a little bit later on the red lap, but regardless, I only used about 73%, so you can imagine without stomping on the brakes. And we'll take off the timing delta, put in speed, and I'm willing to bet that we carried more speed. Yes, indeed. So you see the difference in speed there, peaking for the difference at about 168 versus 179. So an extra 10 kilometers an hour around a corner. That is not insignificant. So pretty interesting to analyze all this data lap to lap and just see how and where you lost time. And it's a great tool. Having those visual references is fantastic. Now, want to do something different for the next section. We're going to compare sims. So let's jump into it. Alright guys, so part 2 of the video. This time we're comparing laps from different sims. This is more just a exercise that I wanted to do, but I figured I would share it with you guys. What's faster, the McLaren 720S GT3 in Assetto Corsa Competizione or in rFactor 2? In this case, we're at Silverstone. None of these are my best laps. I'm usually far closer to the 2 minutes dead point, but just as reference laps, this is an interesting comparison. Generally, I feel I have more connectedness, more sort of feeling of the tire relative to the road surface in rFactor 2, whereas ACC, the setups tend to be better in my opinion. So it's interesting to see how these two will compare. Now, something I want to say, and probably nobody else cares about this, but I'll say it anyway. I think this is remarkable. This is a speed trace of 2 different teams, 2 different sims, trying to recreate the same thing, and it is remarkable how close these speed traces are. I think that's fantastic. Of course, you would say, well, you know, it's the same car, it's the same track, of course it's going to be the same. It is not the case. I tried this versus Project Cars 2, and I could not, of course, the 720S GT3 doesn't exist in that game, but I could not get it even close. It's a totally different thing, and it's just remarkable how close Studio 397 and Kunos got on this. So well done to both teams. Pretty amazing in my opinion, but maybe that's just me. All right, so let's have a look. So we see this speed trace here over the course of the lap. Peak speed identical, again remarkable in my opinion. I think the gearing is a bit different, which I find interesting. Let's turn on the gear and see how that looks over time. Yeah, maybe. On the red lap, which in this case is rFactor 2, we use 6th gear here, whereas I kept 5th in ACC. Both generally the same. Actually, I was 1 gear up here in rFactor 2. Yeah, not too bad. Not as bad as I thought. Anyway, let's look at the relative timing and see what it does. Okay, so the blue lap in this case is Assetto Corsa Competizione. Doesn't feel right to me, so I'm probably going to mess that up. But anyway, ACC is blue here. So as this goes up, that means we are losing time. So in this case, down about, let's see, what's the timing here? 0.3 seconds versus rFactor 2. And then it gets exactly the same here, which is remarkable. And then it all goes to heck here for ACC, really losing a lot of time. And then it gains. I was actually ahead in ACC at this point, only temporarily. It doesn't look the same, does it? That's weird. Okay, could be some track sync issues, not sure why, but clearly it looks like I'm closer to the apex in rFactor 2 than it does in ACC. Not sure exactly what's going on there, but you kind of get the point. And then things really go sideways. So I lost a ton of time here. So just much, much better exit speed in the red lap, the rFactor 2 lap. That's the reference. As you can see, and we'll go through, we'll add speed to this eventually, and I think you'll see that the exit speed coming out of this corner was just in a different league in rFactor 2. And then you have some weird mountains here. Not sure what's going on there. We'll take a look at that. And then the net result, about a 0.43 second differential, if I'm not mistaken. This is bad. What the heck is this? Not sure what happened there. I was just much, much faster in ACC. So why don't we start there? Let's take a look at what happened. Let's add, we'll add speed, and we will add throttle. I like having the delta on so I can see what's going on. So speed a little bit better. How much is that delta? Kind of peaked around there. Okay, difference of 12 kilometers an hour, so that's not inconsequential. Let's go ahead and drag our mouse through this particular section and zoom in and see what we can see. So throttle percentage far higher in ACC. You can see getting way ahead on the relative timing. This is kind of peak. A little bit of extra speed there, not much. 5 kilometers an hour. It does add up over time. Shouldn't have added up yet. What is happening? So throttle percentage, the red here, it looks like we were to full beans earlier in rFactor 2, so why did we lose time? Why is the speed diverging when the throttle is more? It could be traction control, I suppose. That would account for the speed differential. How can we see that? Let's throw in brakes, see what we see. Nothing, both at 0. Steering. Very interesting. So steering was much, much smoother. I'm wondering if that's it. I'm wondering if I was fighting understeer in this case. Again, not a race engineer. I'm sure some people are looking at this right now and yelling at their screen saying, Mike, you're an idiot. And I won't disagree with you, but for now, I'll just say I don't know what's causing that. All I can see is I'm using much more steering. No, I'm not. Steering percentage is higher up to about this point, and then it just stays steady on my ACC lap. Whereas I'm kind of starting my track out on rFactor 2, and you can see that in the hands. So let's look at RPM, see if we can see a dip. Less RPM on the ACC. That's interesting. You can see traction control kicking in there. So it's possible that traction control got me around that corner. Still traction control. This bar should be green, and you'll see that in a second. There, back to green. So was I just using some very intelligent traction control that whole time? Let's take a look. When this bar goes yellow. Yeah, so it's possible that the traction control... Let me know in the comments if you can see what's going on there. Let's reset to the full lap here. We will turn off RPM. Who cares? Speed and delta. Let's look at this, see if we can figure it out. Lost a bunch of time there on the ACC lap. And what the heck happened? Just did not carry as much speed through this complex. So you can see difference of 6 kilometers an hour at that point. And then a difference of 12 kilometers an hour there. Let's turn on our speedometer so we have a visual. Okay, so 12 kilometers an hour faster on rFactor 2, so that's going to account for it. Let's take a look. So this is exactly what I thought I would see here. So the cornering confidence in rFactor 2, for me, just much, much higher. So we're time synced at this point, and watch what happens. Watch how much faster I go through this complex. rFactor 2, again, right at the apex there. Let's go ahead and position sync it. Whoops, that kind of messed things up. Let's go back here. So position synced, so a little bit past the apex and already just a massive disparity. Let's take it back to time. And just much, much quicker. Keep an eye, this is why it's so great to have this video for reference. Keep an eye on the hands and watch how fast I come out of this corner. Track out. You can see the hands there, just much, much faster through that complex with the rFactor 2 car. So I think it's kind of proven the point there, guys. So you can see, how much more speed we got. So at the peak on the rFactor 2 lap, 228 kilometers an hour. Peak for ACC, 222-ish by the looks of things. So you can see what a massive difference that fast exit made. And all in all, the worst it got was right here, where I was just totally in another realm with ACC way behind. But then I did catch up a bit on the corner exit, which we talked about. So that was the traction control. Let's take one more look here, see what might have happened. So it looks like on the corner entry here, I was losing speed, carrying more speed through the corner like I thought I would in rFactor 2. But then here, it looks like I was able to get more speed quicker. So you'll see this blue here, the ACC lap catch up a little bit. And then you can see already rFactor 2 hard into the next corner. ACC just beginning that turn in. And yeah, tons of grip on offer in rFactor 2, not as much in ACC, fighting it a bit. But then the track out is nicer. So it looks like overall, guys, the summary here is that just as I had expected, the turn in for rFactor 2 seems a little bit more, I have more confidence in it, so I can carry more speed. And then on track out ACC, it looks like either the traction control or the setup allows me to get more power down sooner. So that is the big takeaway. You can have fun with it. You can compare between sims. You can compare, of course, laps like we already saw. And if you have friends also running the software, then you can compare their laps to yours. So a pretty amazing tool. And let's get into my final thoughts and review of Circuit Tools and VBOX Sim. So final thoughts on VBOX Sim. This is a serious piece of sim technology. This is really made for people who want to get better and are willing to invest time and intellect into that improvement. Is it a must-have for every sim racer? No. This is for more than just a hobbyist. This is for people who are really committed to getting better and identifying and quantifying their shortcomings as a driver. At $130, it's not a small investment for everyone, but if you're anything like me and have thousands invested in the rest of your rig, the price is not outrageous either. Not to mention, getting similar data from your real-world race car would probably cost 10 times as much. Overall, I really like it. It's a great tool. Having the video is a big bonus for me versus the competition. The amount of data on hand is huge, but the user interface is nicely laid out, and I rarely have to go search to find anything. My biggest gripe, honestly, is the file size. 5 laps in rFactor 2 cost me 11 gigabytes of hard drive space, and none of that video footage I captured across 4 different sims had sound, so that was weird. And lastly, the price. Again, I don't think it's outrageously priced, but the sticker shock is going to turn some people away, especially those of us who are more on the casual end of the spectrum. Compared to 2 other big-name rivals, the VBOX Sim software stands up well, in my opinion. The Motec i2 software is free, so it's likely going to be the go-to for many people, at least as a starting point. But in my opinion, the UI in RaceLogic's offering is more user-friendly, and some of you may have seen Steve from Race Department write about the Driver 61 lap analysis software. Also great and has a look similar to RaceLogic, but it does require an ongoing subscription, so I think the advantage here with the RaceLogic is the one-time fee. So that's it, a powerful tool for us spoiled sim racers. Obviously professional grade software, almost limitless data for us to analyze, and if you're serious about improving your lap times and need a tool to tell you the where, how, and to what degree your driving behavior is affecting your lap times, this is a solid option to get that done. Thanks for watching.